enemy dead ahead.
Thomas.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Oriental, the self-defense riders. My name's Keith, if you haven't met me already. My job is to try and bring things to life for you. And what I just showed you are 3 kata, or sword practice forms, from a Japanese martial art called Bako Jutsu. And Bako was a samurai art. The samurai were the warrior knights of medieval Japan. And Bako was the way they trained themselves to draw their wickedly sharp swords from their scabbards and slice their opponents in what appeared to be a single fast motion, which was and is, as we'll discuss in a minute or two very distinct actions. Now, Bako has a very ancient history in Japan. The first codified school we know of began in the early 1400s, the Katori Shinto Ryu. And Katori is still going today, but it must have been based on techniques that were around for decades, perhaps even generations before the school actually became formalized. So over the next few hundred years, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of sword schools spread up all over Japan, in a country that's always prided itself on the quality of its martial arts. If we want to get an idea of what these sword schools were all about, then I think there's no better idea than to get in our head that image of the American Western gunfighter of the late 19th century. The 2 men who face each other, very, very close distances, hands hovering over their pistols, each hoping he'll be the first to whip that pistol out, aim it, cock it, fire it, and return the pistol to the holster and be the last man standing. Now, can you learn to draw and fire a pistol with deadly intent at great speed? Yes, of course you can. Gunfighters in the Old West learned to do it, and modern special forces and lawmen train to do it all the time. But training is the key, because if you don't know what you're doing with a pistol and you whip it out of the holster, you can put too much pressure on the trigger at the wrong moment, cock it at the wrong moment, shoot your foot off, shoot innocent bystander. And the samurai face similar problems because this is a training version of what we call a katana. And the katana is the best known of all the Japanese battle swords. First of all, it's a saber, which means it's a curved blade, so you can't just draw it straight out of the scabbard. You've got to learn to draw it in an arcing motion. But also, although it's got a completely blunt back edge, you're safe there, this cutting edge here is so sharp that it will easily take off an arm, a leg, or a head if the person swinging it knows what they're doing. This wooden scabbard that you can see encased in, it's called a saya in Japanese, will offer no resistance to that blade at all. And that means if you simply grab hold of the scabbard and the sword and attempt to wrench the one from the other, there's a high likelihood that cutting edge will come into contact with the scabbard, slice through the scabbard, and slice through your left hand as well. So how do you train yourself to draw the sword and put it away without badly injuring yourself? By studying waza. And waza are individual techniques. Put a whole series of waza together and you get a kata. So what I'm going to do is explain the most important waza, the ones that train you to draw and put the sword away, by breaking down the first of the kata that I showed you, mai no teki. And the 4 waza that we're going to look at are generally in Japanese referred to as nukitsuki, that's the initial drawn cut, kiriaroshi, finishing cut, shiburi, a way of cleaning the blade, and loko, a method for putting the sword back in the scabbard again. So mai in Japanese means right in front of you, peki is the Japanese word for enemy, so the enemy is coming at you head on. And what you try and do to begin with is to relax as much as you can. Try and train yourself not to panic in a combat situation. You see the enemy coming at you, your hand comes up to grasp the sword, and it grasps the sword with 4 fingers around the scabbard here, and the thumb curled over the guard. And this is an at-ready position. The samurai carried his sword this way. When he was out and about, he couldn't be sure he was safe, because if anybody tries to grab hold of the sword and wrench it from your grasp, you've got your thumb there to stop them doing it and to give you a chance to react. That being done, several things happen in quick succession. First of all, you put a bit of downward pressure on your left hand to feed the sword into your upcoming right hand. As that happens, you're already stepping forward with your right leg, and you wind up in this position with the sword facing the enemy, but with the pommel foremost. Also, as this happens, your thumb slips off the guard and slides down behind you. And this is very, very important, because from this position here, the thumb is going to push the sword loose from the scabbard. And the push is important because the Japanese sword is held in the scabbard by a brass collar, you can see here, that's called a habaki. And the habaki is actually there to keep the sword jammed in the scabbard. So if I lean over, the sword doesn't fall out of the scabbard. However, what sometimes happens is that the sword becomes jammed in the scabbard. And again, if you try then to wrench the sword from the scabbard, it doesn't come loose immediately, then you're the one that loses that life or death encounter. So the push just begins the draw. So we come up, we step, we push, and now the draw and the cut happens. In the style that I study, it happens across 2 steps. And what you have to think of here, this is the real danger point, is you are drawing and then cutting. They are 2 separate actions. You mustn't confuse the draw with the cut, because if you do, what's happening here essentially is you're pushing the sword forwards, drawing the scabbard back, and as the sword leaves the scabbard, you're making the cut. Now, if you are only thinking about the cut, you'll be drawing the sword in one plane, but you may be drawing the scabbard back in a different plane. And if you do that, once again, you'll slice through the scabbard and slice through your hand. So from here now, as this happens, we must make sure that we draw and cut. So once you've made your cut, what have you done? Well, beat your opponent's weapon aside, that's a possibility. Cut their sword arm on the way into the attack, that's another possibility. Cut the body beneath the sword arm, third possibility, or else missed. Now, if you miss, you're in real trouble, especially if your blow comes too far out of line, because they will hurt. So now we move on to the second one, so Kiriyoshi. So from here now, with the point threatening the opponent, I dominate that grab between us. And having dominated it, I prepare a second cut, a 2-handed cut, a very powerful cut, and one that should, if done properly, slice right through the opponent and put them down for good more. But you still can't be sure that they're out of the fight. So after you've made your Kiriyoshi, you immediately bring your sword up into the mid-level guard, Shudan. Not only does this give you the opportunity of threatening them, if there's any life left in them, but also it gives you the opportunity to face anybody else that comes out to fight you, to the right, to the left, even behind you, if you sense there's an enemy there. If you don't sense there's an enemy there, we can move on to our third waza, which is Chiburi. So I just slice this poor devil once, maybe twice with my razor-sharp sword. It's all covered now in what I would euphemistically refer to as a raspberry jab. If we only clear the raspberry jab off the sword and shove it back in the scabbard, then we imagine the sword will get stuck in the scabbard. And again, you won't be able to react lightning fast if you're attacked further down the road. So we have to clean as much of the muck off the blade as we can. So chiburi in Japanese means almost literally life essence flicking. So what you do from here is done very differently in different schools. In the school that I study, it's done with a straight snap to the right of the arm, thus. And then all the muck on the blade goes all over you, but it doesn't go all over me. So that's clean most of the muck off the blade. What I would now do is take out a cloth or some rice paper, and I would clean the blade thoroughly, and then I would put it away. You don't make any reference to that in most cutter, it's just the initial stage of chiburi here. So now we're ready to put the sword away, the final waza noto. So what you do now is, let me put it this way. We've established we've got a razor sharp edge here. You've probably worked out for yourself you've got a pin sharp point. Would you really want to put this sword away by going, because sooner or later you'll cut your finger really, really bad. So the trick is, also bear in mind, those enemies might still be out there waiting for you. The minute you look down here, you're vulnerable. So what we want to do is put the sword away without looking down. The way you do that is by, after shibori, catching hold of the scabbard. But this time just with these three fingers, because these two are going to act as a cushion for us to lay the sword blade on. Not the sharp edge. Probably won't let that yourself. But the blunt back. So what you do and grasp the scabbard is you flip the sword over onto its back and lay it on the crook between your thumb and your forefinger. And then from here essentially you repeat the drawing action. Push the sword forward, pull the scabbard back until the point neatly drops into the mouth of the scabbard. Once it's in the mouth of the scabbard, you can slide the two together and then finish your kata ceremonially by coming up with the back leg, closing off the sword, engaging the habaki seal with your thumb, giving the sword a little salute, taking a step onto the back with your eyes on the forward opponent, and the rest of the steps back, watching what's going on around you. Then you relax and prepare for the next kata. So when you put all that together, you get Nukitsuki moving into Keiroshi. Shibori, catch the scabbard, Noto. Two steps back, eyes on the opponent, rest of the steps back, looking around you, relax. That's the simplest kata you can learn, just those four basic waza. Some kata are much, much longer, 30, 40, 50, 60 waza in them. When it's at that stage, you're very advanced, and this is about ninjutsu, more generalized sword fighting. So you're going to be taught hacks, slashes, thrusts, ducks, dives, spins, jumps, all sorts of things the fight master believes will make you a better swordsman. So what I'll do to finish off with is, I'll show you the other 5 kata in the style I studied, and you'll see how they prepare you from attacks coming from different directions. So you saw 3 at the beginning. Maino Tegi that we broke down. The enemy's coming at you from the front. Migi is coming at you from the right-hand side. Hidara is coming at you from the left-hand side. You probably won't be surprised to hear the next one, which is called a Shiro no Tegi, means he is behind you. Shiro no Tegi. Zenmen no Tegi. More than one enemy coming at you from the front. Migi, Hidari, Shomen. Finally, sumo giri, which is preparation for test kata. So in Japanese swordsmanship, you learn single-person kata, like I've showed you this afternoon. Then you move on to two-person kata, where your partner has a sword. You swap attacks and defences. You cut the safety margins to the absolute minimum, and that teaches you distance and timing. And then finally, they give you a razor-sharp sword and some targets to cut. So the targets are made of bamboo or straw matting, rather like beach mats. And you roll these up tightly, you tie them off, you soak them for a few hours, drain them for a few hours, and you wind up with a tube that's slightly damp, slightly spongy, and it said replicates the resistance of a human limb, and you practice your cuts until you can make beautiful cuts with the minimum of effort. Then when you get really good, which I'm not, so I haven't done this, you move on to swim line or giddy. And that's when you get perhaps half a dozen of these mats, and you put them in a U-shaped holder in front of you, so they look like the wall of a log cabin. And then you try and cut all the way through from the top to the bottom with a single blow. One of these days, I should try it. Swim on with you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This one is just saying